We're starting off by putting the pockets in. These are really, really easy to do. If you don't want to do the pocket, of course, the protruding edge here has to be cut off. You just want to place the pockets right sides facing each other on top of this pocket edge. And then we're going to sew it together with a seam allowance of 1 centimeter, both on the front and on the back. And then afterwards we can just close the side seam and sew all the way around the pocket. I do the same on my front pieces. One centimeter seam allowance. Don't forget to lock in your stitches at the beginning and the end. And you do that for every single pocket, of course. And then we overlock that edge. And I'm just feeding the next one straight in. Now we're going back to the sewing machine, and with the seam facing into the pocket, we're going to top stitch the edge. Make your stitch length a little bit longer. I mean, nobody's going to see it, so it doesn't really matter, but it's a good habit to always make the stitch length longer when you're doing top stitching. Now we're going to put together the side seam. So you just put the front onto the back, all the edges neatly on top of each other. And then we're going to pin this. I'm just going to put a few pins in here, and we're going to sew it all in. Now, when you do the seam, this point here might be really hard to gauge because it doesn't look quite right when you're on the sewing machine. So go down 1 centimeter, exactly the seam allowance from both the pocket and the top. And then where they hit, that's where you want to turn when you're on the sewing machine. And on this spot here, it will not look like 1 centimeter, so it's nice to mark it, even if it's just a rough little mark. So you go straight down for 1 centimeter, then turn, go down to the point you've marked, needle down, lift your presser foot, turn your fabric, and then you go around the pocket. Super simple. And now we're coming to that really sharp point. Even if you don't get these quite right, it doesn't really matter. You won't see it at all. But it's a good idea to always get into these really, really tidy, neat habits, so that when you're sewing something much more complicated, it's so ingrained in you that you're doing it right, and you don't have to fiddle with stuff and pick stuff. Now I'm going to even out my edges, because I'm going to turn off the knife on my overlocker so I don't accidentally cut into my corner, because it's really hard to get around the corner without doing that and making it neat. Here we've got that really, really sharp corner. We don't want to cut our fabric by accident when we do this on the serger or overlocker. So I've turned my knife off so I can go really close here and move it around. And that's why I needed to neaten my edges, because of course it won't cut anything off, and it gives you a really nice finish like that. You could, of course, turn the knife off and on just in front of that sharp corner, but I tell you what, it's so easy to forget that you've turned it off or turned it back on, and then you've got it, right? You've cut into your fabric. So I always do that, because if I go into my autopilot mode, it's really easy to cut into your fabric. And you can see here how nice and neat that will look when you're done. Now we need to iron it. Now you've actually got a little bit of a slight curve in the pocket area. So when we're ironing this, and we're ironing the seam into the front piece, what you want to do is just iron the lower part and then move it over to the edge of your ironing board, and then do the pocket because of the curve. Otherwise you'll end up with a little pleat. And now I'm going to do something I didn't do in the written instructions. I'm going to top stitch that seam. You don't have to, you can just leave it as it is. It looks very nice inside and out, but I've decided to do that. So if you're following my lead here, please extend your stitch length to 3.5 and then just sew to the pocket opening. Just move the fabric over to the other side of the pocket and sew down the seam. And now we can start sewing the skirt.